I just want to start off by saying, if you are a white person and you happen to watch this video, please do not take offense to what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with white people, but because of this video, we are talking about history. We are talking about our ancestors, and I have a problem with your ancestors. I'm not talking about you though in this video. So please don't come in my comments being, hostile, because like I said, I'm here for everybody being kumbaya, but we're gonna acknowledge what happened in history. So if you are sensitive and you feel like this criticism of this movie and of history is an attack on you, if you cannot separate your current self from your ancestors, please click off of this video. Thank you. Now, everybody else who has stayed on this video, let's get into it. Y'all, I just came back in from watching the movie Sinners, and when I say this has to be one of the best movies I've watched in a while, I really mean that. And it's like this, it just woke something up in me that I cannot even explain. Like, I don't even want to say woke something up, because I feel like I've already been down that path of waking up and really getting to know my roots. But I feel like just this movie just pushed me more in that direction of keep going, because I feel like when you're around people where I feel like there's like this group thinking that we have in society, people have certain beliefs that have been given to us, I feel like it's so hard to sometimes really dive deep into just your roots. Because when it comes to like black folks, I don't even want to talk about black people, I'm talking about just people of color. When we think about our roots, people demonize it, and I just don't understand why. Like, how do you demonize your ancestors? How do you demonize where you came from, your traditions, your culture, your ways of thinking? But with what man, the white man, we're gonna get into it, what the white man has made us believe is what you guys claim to be your everything. But then when you talk about your roots, you guys demonize it like it's wrong and you shouldn't be, like thinking about those things. And I'm sorry if I sound a little nasally, because I am on day 2 of being sick, but we're gonna push through. But anyways, y'all, this movie, like, first of all, this is going to be a spoiler, and I'm just giving my very fresh reaction because I just came out of the movie theaters like 20-30 minutes ago, and I'm gonna, like get out my raw, just what I'm thinking. I even took notes, y'all. I took notes in the movie theaters, I know. But I'm gonna just share what's like on the top of my head, and then I'm gonna go cook, and then while I'm doing that, I'm gonna really sit down and take notes and really analyze everything that I've taken in and, connect the dots. And then I want to come back with like a really deep analysis, because there are just so many spiritual like insight that's being thrown in there. And I've seen somebody do a review, I didn't watch the review, but just the title, it was like black people saying that the movie is demonic, when it's like there was nothing demonic about it. Like, yes, it was supposed to be a horror film, but when you really pay attention, that goes into exactly what I'm saying. And as a person who has always had spiritual gifts that I feel like I always ran away from because I didn't understand it, and I also feel like when you grow up around religious people, it's not really something that you even want to entertain, because you don't want to be looked at as like, what the hell is wrong with you type of thing. But also, if you were to try to discuss it with somebody, they're gonna make it seem like something's wrong with you. And even just as a young girl, like, to see how people talk about just like spirituality and things like that, it was always something where I was just like, okay, like I didn't feel comfortable within myself, or I feel like I always gaslighted myself, because I'm like, nah, I'm tripping. But as I got older, as I got more in tune with myself, it's like when things keep happening back to back to back in so many different ways that you cannot even explain, it's like, okay, it made me want to dive deeper into getting comfortable, for one, with myself, but also learning myself. And I don't even know if this is something I should be sharing on the internet, but like, I promise y'all, I'm innocent, but I'm just being honest. Like, there are people in this world who have spiritual gifts, and I feel like because of how society will demonize you and call you certain things, it makes you shy away from it. And I'm a person, I believe in God, but I also don't believe in coincidences. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't believe that things just happen and there was no reason for it happening. Because again, there are countless examples that I have in my life where if I were to lay out everything, you would be like, what the heck? Like, as I was. But now it's kind of just like, okay, I'm not so like shocked by it. It's more so like happened again type of thing, you know, or like, okay, what can I like, I'm learning how to be more in tune with it. And just to give you guys an example, I only heard about Sinners yesterday. Like, I didn't just hear about it, like I've seen the title, but it never caught my eye to say like, oh, let me like look at the picture, let me look at like the trailer. I didn't know anything about the movie. I literally just booked my ticket yesterday and I'm like, oh well, tomorrow's Tuesday, let me just go. And again, I knew nothing about the movie. And mind you, the day prior to that, I was sitting on my island just figuring out different names for my new cooking channel, because I'm going to separate my cooking content from my commentary content. And I was thinking about labeling myself as the kitchen griot. And in the movie, as soon as it started, it was giving like just the backstory of griots and things like that. And I was just like, wow, like that's such a coincidence, right? And then just to see the movie, when I tell you guys, it just lit something in me. Like, y'all have to go watch the movie. But anyways, I'm gonna give you guys just a quick run through of my notes. It's not long, but I'm gonna just get out the thoughts that I wrote while I was in the movie theater, so that way I could just end this portion here, really think about it after cooking, and then I'm gonna come back and give a full analysis, because I don't want to repeat myself like twice, like giving a mini analysis now and then giving an in-depth analysis. But just to kind of give my notes, I have ancestral music and culture. If y'all know, y'all know. In the middle of the movie, when I tell you that part of the movie woke something up in me, like it woke something up in me, okay? And then my next note is white folks are the demons who have plagued us. Okay? And then I have deceptive white people who seem to be kind and gentle, but again, they the real demons, right? And then I realized that they were vampires and the spreaders of plagues, right? And then I have vampires who are singing Irish style music. We're gonna come back and really talk about it, because there's so much to unpack. So y'all, we are back after 14 pages of written notes, because y'all, when I say I did an analysis, I did not cut you guys short of a good analysis, and I promise you guys it is so worth it. And I did decide to break this up into 2 parts, because I feel like if I would have done like everything all in one video, just by how detailed I am and how I really wanted to break down this movie, we would have been sitting here for ages. So this video is going to be part 1, and we're going to be doing a character analysis, and then we're also going to be doing a spiritual deep dive. And y'all, I promise you it is so worth it. So please get comfortable, get you a little snack or whatever, because we're going to be here for a while. And also, because I literally wrote this out like I was writing an essay, I'm going to be reading most of the time from my iPad. So I'm not going to be having like full eye contact with, you know, the camera, but I'm going to try to look up here and there. And also I'm going to try to get part 2 out by like Monday the latest, but I'm like moving on Wednesday, so I have like a lot going on right now, but I'm really going to try to get that out as soon as possible. So stay tuned and let's get into the video. So now we're going to begin our character analysis. So I really wanted to start off with the Native Americans, who we only saw once in the film, because I feel like those characters are just not getting enough recognition. However, I'm gonna save their analysis for last, just because I feel like it'll be a great transition into the deep dive on the spiritual side. So first, we're gonna start off with the twins Smoke and Stack. The scene is set in 1932 in Mississippi. The story revolves around a set of twin brothers with the adopted names of Smoke and Stack, both played by Michael B. Jordan. Throughout the film, they represent a dual pair in various ways. We see that in how they both respond to systematic oppression, battling with navigating authenticity and personal integrity versus playing into the system's game in order to win. Smoke was more of the cautious one who considered the possibility of negative outcomes, while Stack was the bolder risk taker who felt more confident leaning into potential conflict if it meant there was a reward in the end. And there was also clear contrast within their representation, with Smoke representing choosing his blackness while Stack enmeshes himself with whiteness. Some examples of that throughout the film is how Smoke is paired with a black woman named Annie, who is a hoodoo practitioner, while Stack, on the other hand, is paired with Mary, a white passing woman. Both women whose characters will be analyzed soon. And we all know how dangerous it was for interracial relationships in those times. If you looked at a white person the wrong way, you were giving them an opportunity to eliminate a person of color without much consequence, but Stack still took that chance with Mary. Another example is in the juke joint, Smoke accepts all forms of payment as long as people are enjoying themselves, while Stack only wants to accept currency that is adopted within the white system, so American dollars and coins. Now, the twins were veterans of World War I and then hit big at a casino where they were now basically seen as big ballers, as we noticed throughout the film. They came back to Mississippi to reinvest back into the community by opening up a juke joint to create a safe space for people of color to enjoy themselves, but it was also a business for them at the end of the day. Another interesting thing that I noticed is when the twins were away in Chicago, they came back with hundreds of Irish beer and Italian wine to serve to the people in the juke joint. So they are basically replicating what colonizers do to people of color: come in and experience, take their culture, their items, and resell it to people as a high value piece, which represents them playing the same game of cultural appropriation and exploitation. Smoke and Stack went to buy an old sawmill from a white man who willingly gave them a price that he was comfortable with, in which they paid in full in cash, right? So there should be no future issues. Yet, that man and his Klansmen planned to con them, but let's not get too far ahead. Opening night, it was made clear that this space is for people of color, just to maintain safety for everyone. However, Mary is given a pass due to her sharing a pass with them all. But the twins are not fond of that at all, and they try to get her out, but she refuses. However, Stack is eventually driven by his lust and love for Mary, which leads him to his demise. All hell breaks loose from there, and the true fight begins. Smoke is repeatedly met with a difficult decision of choosing his twin brother that he loves dearly and eliminating his now corrupted vampiric brother. And I just think it's interesting that we come to find out that Smoke allowed Stack to live as long as they let Sammy live out his life, but also how Stack was empathetic enough to not turn against Smoke even in his vampiric state. It shows how deeply connected they were at the soul as twin brothers. And it's also kind of unclear of Smoke's belief system because he doesn't necessarily adopt Christian beliefs. However, instead, he is shown to doubtfully entertain hoodoo spiritual practices because of his love for Annie. He even holds on to her spiritually protected mojo bag along his journey, but in the end, he rips off his necklace, aka the mojo bag, which is a form of spiritual protection, signifying his disbelief in it. However, it's interesting that he's been kept alive throughout major events with that bag, but the second he decides to remove it, he is met with suspected betrayal by the Klansmen, in which he was prepared for battle, eliminating them all, but he also came to his own ending. So that leaves the question, was that mojo bag really a form of spiritual, supernatural protection for him? We'll discuss more of that soon. And then Smoke is seen crossing over, where he sees Annie and their daughter, in which she passes her over to him. And then I ended up leaving the theater because I literally thought it was done, but I heard that like there was a bit more mid-credits, so I'm gonna go watch the movie again, but this analysis, that little bit doesn't change anything because I really went into detail. Now let's get into Sammy, the other main character. Sammy is a spiritually gifted young man who has the gift of playing the guitar and singing. In ancient times, he would be the equivalent of a griot that pierces the veil, connecting us to the past and the future. A griot is a West African oral historian, storyteller, praise singer, and musician. They are also skilled poets and often improvise songs to convey current events or social commentary. Sammy is nicknamed Preacher Boy in the film because he is the son of a pastor. And this serves as a form of resistance for him throughout the film because his father believes being a blues guitarist will lead him down the path of sinfulness and tells him, if you keep dancing with the devil, one day he's going to follow you home. Beliefs adopted from the Christian religion to demonize ancient African culture. And although he urges Sammy to abandon his music and the guitar, Sammy's deep love and connection for his undeniable God-given talent brushes his dad off and pursues his day choosing his passion. So throughout the film, Sammy shares his songs that reflect his current life, and this opens doors of both great opportunity and misfortune. He was even fearfully willing to stand his ground at gunpoint in his decision of choosing music, aka his ancestral and cultural identity, versus following the safe path of his father's footsteps, the assimilated European religious path. Now, the best part of the movie that we can all agree on, because child, that part, it was tea, okay? Is opening night of the juke joint where Sammy blesses the stage with his presence, and this conjured up so many ancestors of the past. This scene beautifully and intensely showcased the evolution of ancestral music to modern day style of music, and it was a dance of various timelines and cultural influences all existing to create a masterpiece. However, it caught the ear of Ramik, an Irish vampire who is drawn to the musical talents and vibrant black culture within the juke joint. More details about him will come soon. Sammy, who is seen as the representation of the culture, is the main target, so he has to fight his way to survival with the help of the others risking their lives to preserve his. This can represent the fight of people of color over time trying their best to protect their sacred origins from being infiltrated by outsiders, aka culture vultures, which we will also dive deeper into in part 2. Towards the end of the fight, Sammy is standing in the lake with Ramik, where he begins to start praying scriptures of the Bible. Then surprisingly, Ramik mocks and joins him in prayer, stating those were the same exact scriptures that was taught to his ancestors after they were stripped of their Irish culture, making it known that he was also a victim to colonization, which I feel like a lot of people didn't catch that part. But anyways, Sammy uses his guitar that is made of silver and wood to destabilize Ramik, while Smoke comes in to save the day with a wood stab to Ramik's chest, ending his life. The sun comes up and Sammy travels back home, where he walks in and interrupts Sunday service, in which his dad greets him and tells him to put down the guitar. Sammy doesn't want to be on the plantation, and he doesn't want to abandon the gifts that enlighten his soul, so that day he chooses his own path and lives his life being a well-known blues musician. In the end, vampiric Stack and Mary pay him a visit in which they offer him eternal life, but he chooses to decline the deal with the devil and maintains his integrity and dignity by not corrupting himself or selling out, and remains intact until his life on Earth naturally ends. Next, we will discuss Delta Slim. He is also a blues musician who plays the harmonica. He is seen as a mentor figure for Sammy, sharing his past experiences and wisdom throughout the movie. He is introduced as the stereotype for what people of the time believed blues singers embodied, drunkards. And although he already performs at another club, he is motivated to perform at the juke joint with the incentive of having access to Irish beers. And initially, he tries to downplay Sammy's gift of music, basically saying, "You don't know nothing about that," until he hears Sammy plays for himself, and that's when Sammy got his stamp of approval. On their ride back to prepare for the opening night, they pass a plantation field with slaves working that Delta Slim knows, and this serves as a pivotal moment in the film. Delta Slim shares wisdom about the essence of the blues and its deep-rooted connection to pain and resilience, saying the blues is born in pain, which emphasizes that the genre is not just music, but that it is a manifestation of past experiences, suffering, and the enduring of the human spirit, which I will further dissect soon. And it also signifies the generational transmission of knowledge, similar to how griots would pass down knowledge from one generation to another to continue down the path. During opening night, Delta Slim serves as a physical protector for everyone. When Cornbread goes out to use the bathroom, Delta Slim covers him at the door. However, Cornbread takes forever to return, and when he does, he asks for permission to enter. Others seen it as normal, but immediately that raises a red flag to Delta Slim, and he interrogates Cornbread, asking him, why are you all of a sudden asking for permission when you can just walk in like you've been doing the entire night? And that is when they realized he had been turned into a vampire. So that was Delta Slim's unknowing first act of protection. But when the vampires were invited into battle, Delta Slim made it very clear and stood on his word that they would have to get through him before he lets them get to anyone else. So it was very clear that he knew it was his last day living and wanted to go out respectfully. And he definitely held it down, I'll say that, because if I would have saw all them vampires coming at me at one time, baby, I would have ran up them steps. Next, we will be discussing Annie. Annie is Smoke's lover and the mother of their deceased daughter. She is a hoodoo practitioner and represents the spiritual guide and protector throughout the film. And unlike your common entertainment representatives, she is a beautiful, full-figured, dark-skinned black woman who is unapologetic about her beliefs and does not abandon her ancestral ways. In the film, she has her own spiritual shop with shelves of herbs and different containers where she's introduced to us serving a customer before Smoke arrives. It is made very clear the love and bond that they share, and that is displayed in the protection she casts over him. She created a mojo bag with the intention of protection over his life while he was away, and despite Smoke's weariness of the supernatural due to her not being able to save their daughter's life, he's held on to it the entire time because he loves her and he respects her beliefs. Opening night, she blesses them all with cooking for the event, and Annie's role of being the spiritual protector and the guide comes into play when Smoke catches Mary feasting on Stacks. And when Annie sees that Mary gets shot several times and she gets right back up, she notices that they are dealing with something far more sinister. She rules it out of being a skinwalker and she identifies them as vampires. And when Delta Slim calls out Cornbread's weird behavior about asking for permission to enter, again, Annie steps in using her discernment to confirm the red flag that only evil spirits require permission to enter into a space. That is why a lot of people say like you shouldn't have a welcome mat in front of your home, because you are basically giving permission to unwanted spirits entering your space. Her spiritual knowledge is literally what saves them, well, buys them time throughout the film. She makes it known the tools and the materials that they need in order to repel and fight back against the vampires. Some of those materials being wood, silver, and garlic. She is also shown practicing divination where she predicts her death and tells Smoke that if she is bitten by a vampire to please just end her life because she doesn't want her soul to be trapped here and you know she wants to go back to her baby girl. In the end, her spirit appears with her holding her baby dressed in white, symbolizing a successful crossover into a different realm. Then we have Mary, who is Stack's ex-lover. She is a Southern Belle white passing woman, so she is basically phenotypically white, but her grandfather's father was black, making her 1/8 black. However, she benefits from white privilege. She developed a relationship with Stack before he got drafted for World War I. She waited for him, but he goes to her even after returning, and she ends up running into him at the train station where it's very evident that she's heartbroken by his absence and his abandonment, but he acts very cold and dismissive with her. Fast forward to opening night, Mary shows up and people are suspiciously viewing her as a white woman in a black dominated space. Some want her gone, some welcome her, but she chooses to stay because she feels like she deserves to enjoy the night just like everyone else. While Sammy is performing on stage and the three vampires appear insisting they have money to spend and want to fellowship and play music, their offer is turned down. And because it would only make sense to use a vulnerable white woman to depict this scene of privilege during these times, because God forbid a black person does this, Mary uses her whiteness and relatability to confidently go to speak with them in the dark night, only for them to use her weakness of not fitting in and her grief of losing her mother against her to lower her defenses, which also represented them being like monitoring and familiar spirits, because how y'all even know all of that? But once she realizes something is off with them and tries to escape, she becomes a victim and she is the first person of the group to turn into a vampire. This represents how even opening the door for one single person who can fellowship with both sides of the coin can potentially lower the defenses and influence a group to spread the plague of colonization. Under the impression that she is normal, she is welcomed back in, now compromising everyone's safety. She goes after Stack, her first victim, enticing him with lust and gets them into a room alone where she attacks and turns him. When Smoke discovers him, he shoots her several times thinking she's dead, but she surprises them all by getting up and running out. In the end, she is seen with Stack in their vampiric form, blending in with society as the two of them pay a visit to Sammy in his old age, offering him eternity, and again he turned it down. And then we have Grace and Beau. They are a married Asian couple who are longtime friends of the twins. They own 2 markets that they are successfully running alongside their teenage daughter. As Asian American grocery store owners, they play the role of bridging the gap of white and black communities by providing essential goods during an era marked by segregation. The significance of Chinese immigrants' presence often goes unnoticed despite their contributions in the American South. So y'all, it wasn't just black and white people in the South during that time. There were other people also there, but I feel like we don't really acknowledge those people. We just always think black and white. So that's why they're in this film. They are asked to help with preparation for the juke joint's grand opening, to provide food supplies and artwork, which they delivered. Their last-minute involvement highlights their friendship, but also the collaborative spirit amongst marginalized communities striving for autonomy. Unfortunately, with the night getting chaotic, the couple is now thinking about getting home to their daughter. Beau goes out to get the car started, only to be turned into a vampire. He then threatens Grace to go after their daughter, and due to her desperation to protect her daughter, her motherly instincts kicked in. She invites the vampires in, and y'all, essentially she just put everyone at risk. And I just wonder, like, had she not called the vampires in, how would the night have went? Because they literally could have just waited until, you know, the sun came up, but she just didn't want to do that. And you know what, I get it. During desperate times, people do desperate things, and that's also, you know, I feel like what this scene showcased. For the vampires, I want to dive deeper into their significance in part 2, discussing the exploitation and cultural appropriation surrounding music, especially within the music industry, and so much more. So y'all stay tuned for part 2 because I'm gonna really cook up in there as well. But just like a brief review, the story first begins with an injured man approaching a white couple's home in the middle of nowhere. He gave them a sob story about being hunted down and just wanting to get back to his wife, and basically using their empathy against them. Soon after, the Native Americans came knocking on the door to collect them, warning them about the dangerous threat that man serves, but they didn't listen, so they ended up leaving. The wife then goes upstairs to find that her husband is turned into a vampire and her to be next. Fast forward, opening night, they are drawn to Sammy's sound while he performs, and they present themselves as friendly, happy-go-lucky folks playing the ukulele. And even after they were rejected, they would not take no for an answer. They pleaded with gold to spend and music to play. Eventually, they sat aside on the end of the road playing their music until approached by Mary, making her their first victim. Then eventually, they just started getting all of them one by one as they left the juke joint for the night, spreading the plague even further until they are eventually called in by Grace, fighting until the very end. In the end, it is revealed that Rameek wants Sammy specifically because he wants his story, he wants his music. It becomes very clear that once Rameek bites you, it's almost like he siphons your energy and essentially absorbs their cultural identity and uses it for his own purposes. Again, we're going to dive deeper into that in part 2 video that you don't want to miss. Finally, we have the Native Americans, who was only seen one time in the film. They showed up to the white couple's house warning them about the dangerous man on the loose, but because Rameek, the initial vampire, told them a different story and played victim, they didn't listen to the warning and shortly became victim themselves. The natives represent the first indigenous people who were victims to colonization. They came to warn people right? Warn them about fellowshipping and integrating with the colonizers. Because if you don't know history, the natives were here before the white man's discovery of the land, and due to the natives' kind and welcoming nature, because it's like, what's the purpose of being evil? But like, for some reason, these other folks got some demons in them that I just don't understand. But the colonizers took advantage of their kind nature and used their naivety against them. There is historical evidence that colonizers, including the British, pretended to gift the natives but had the sinister intention to deliberately distribute smallpox contaminated blankets and other items to Native American populations to spread disease. This practice was a form of biological warfare. The intentional spread of disease had devastating consequences for Native American communities, leading to widespread illnesses, death, and a significant decline in the population. So as you can see, they've been out here targeting people left and right. And y'all, the native people tried to warn them white folks and they didn't listen. And I feel like it was too late by the time she noticed. Now that we got the character analysis out of the way, let's get into the juicy part of the spiritual analysis. Because y'all, I feel like there's so many different mixed reactions I'm hearing from people about this film. And I just feel like I'm at a point where, like, within society, when people talk about like religion and spirituality, I just feel like I'm in a place where I'm open to, like, you know, believe what you want to believe, but it's just like, when I understand that a lot of people's beliefs are not based on them having knowledge and them just blindly following things, but also so like headstrong in what they believe, it's kind of just like, damn, like, I don't know, like, I'm empathetic, but it's just like, can I like give you some information so that you can really think about it? Because when I hear people so headstrong about their belief systems, again, I'm not saying, listen, believe what you want to believe, but like, will your beliefs be the same when you have the information that you seem to be lacking to make a better, you know, a more informed decision? Is it your ignorance to the information, like what's hindering you from critically thinking about what you are being told? You know what? I'm talking too much. Let me just provide you the information so we could just get straight into it. So now we are getting to the part that I am most excited for. So y'all buckle up, because I know this might ruffle some feathers, but I mean everything that I say respectfully. I'm just providing you information. So people are calling the film demonic because of the title Sinners, religion versus spirituality, the music and the chants, and just the vampire references. So I just want to say, the film uses the concept of vampires as a metaphor for the corruption and exploitation of the system that the characters are struggling against. The story is not about killing vampires. It's about fighting for their own freedom and justice. So let's just make that very clear, right? People who are calling this movie demonic, I feel like you guys are looking at things from a literal sense, versus I feel like you guys critically thinking past the metaphors. So first, let's discuss the title Sinners. The word sinner is used in religion. To be a sinner is to do things that go against the morality and principles that represent the Spirit of God, also known as the Most High's expectation of us as humans. Although the most common religions are all practically different versions of the exact same thing, they have a few differences within their rules that could cause them to label you as a sinner. In the film, the subtitle or the phrase used in the advertisement is "We are all sinners." So that leaves room for interpretation depending on the side of the coin that you are on. For one, from a religious standpoint, you can be seen as a sinner for going against your religion's rules by your actions, your disobedience, or entertaining spiritual practices because it's of the devil. Or from another lens, similar to the film, you can be seen as a sinner for abandoning your ancestral and spiritual beliefs and culture that is natural in its purest form to adopt an assimilated man-made religion that causes you to demonize your ancestors. Leaving one to question, are you a sinner based on disobeying man-made religious ideologies? Or are you a sinner for going against your natural God-created order? Just think about it. I'm gonna really be picking your brain with this video, so let's continue. Now, let's talk about religion and spiritual practices. So to begin, I am a firm believer that spirituality is literally the foundation for everyone, whether you are aware or connected to self through a divine source or not. If religion is the gateway for you to know God, that's fair, because that is the reality for a lot of people that need tangible structure in a system that is designed to keep us disconnected from God. But one thing I've never understood is how a person can be religious but not be spiritually in tune. That doesn't make any sense to me, because how are you genuinely and intuitively connecting if you lack that spiritual understanding? And y'all, I came to this conclusion because there are a lot of religious people who are not spiritually in tune, but it comes from a space of like, you're religious, but like you just go based off of what you know and what you're being told, but not because you feel that connection. If you get what I'm saying. But let's do a quick little history lesson on the origins of the most common belief systems, both of organized religion and spiritual practices, starting with religion. So it's difficult to pinpoint one specific religion as the first. However, Hinduism is often considered the oldest major religion still practiced today. Some scholars argue that religious practices existed even before the earliest written texts, with evidence of ritualistic behavior, which literally sounds like spiritual practices just turned into man-made religion. Maybe due to written preservation of the knowledge, it ended up morphing into religion. But anyways, let's continue the breakdown. Ancient Israelites religion. The religion of the ancient Israelites evolved from beliefs and practices of the Canaanite religions. These ancient religions prevalent in the Bronze Age were polytheistic, meaning they worshipped multiple deities of gods and goddesses, each with their own roles and attributes. But of the gods, El was considered the creator god, father of the gods and humankind, and the god of wisdom. Then the religion underwent transformations after the exile, eventually leading to the development of what is known as Judaism. So while their early religion was polytheistic, they gradually transitioned towards monotheism, emphasizing Yahweh as their national and spiritual deity. This faith involved rituals like temple worship, sacrifices, and festivals. Then you have Christianity, and this one is going to ruffle some feathers. Do not come for me. Do your research. Christianity is an evolution of Roman Catholic beliefs, which is known for their practices of paganism and their beliefs in gods and goddesses. So them holidays that y'all be celebrating throughout the year, they are all pagan holidays. And not only is Christianity made up of pagan roots, but it is also borrowed heavily from Judaism, so the Jews, aka Christ's origin of belief. So when people of specific religions spread the idea that if you don't believe anything but their beliefs, so say for example with Christians, when they say if you believe in anything else but Christ then you're going to hell, make it make sense if the Christian religion is a combination of two of the things that y'all claim y'all don't want to come into agreement with. Now let's get into Islam, the Muslim religion. Islam's origin is linked to the Prophet Muhammad and his revelations in Mecca. Muslims believe Muhammad received divine messages from God through the angel Gabriel, culminating in the holy book known as the Quran. But it is also known that he borrowed heavily from both Judaism and Christianity to create the Islamic religion. So my thing is, are y'all starting to notice a pattern here? But let's continue into the spiritual practices. So first we have Santeria, an Afro-Caribbean religion rooted in West African Yoruba traditions and spirituality with elements of Roman Catholicism. Again, another blend. To blend Yoruba beliefs with Catholicism, Santeria practitioners often associate deities called Orishas with Catholic saints, facilitating integration and understanding within a Catholic-dominated society. So basically, just because we live in a Catholic society and we need to make it make sense to y'all, we're going to tie our deities to what you guys know and we're going to make them equivalent when it's like it's two different belief systems. But you see, again, you're taking African spirituality, but you're now putting a white face to it because you want it to stick. Santeria relies heavily on divination and partake in rituals including offerings, ceremonies, and initiations, establishing connections between practitioners and the orishas, who were believed to provide guidance, protection, and wisdom to their devotees. Next, we have hoodoo, which is what we have seen in the film. It is a folk spiritual tradition practiced by African Americans in the southern United States. Their beliefs are often associated with magic, healing, and protection, often drawing up African spiritual traditions and indigenous American knowledge. So, during assimilation, this was practiced alongside Christianity, so they would label themselves as Christians while still practicing their spiritual beliefs that the Europeans labeled demonic. Then we have voodoo, which is rooted in the belief that all things possess spirits and these spirits can influence the world. It involves worship of various deities, including spirits of nature and the deceased, with practices including rituals like dance, music, and chanting to communicate with them. Voodoo in Haiti and New Orleans developed through the blend of African traditions with elements of Roman Catholicism and other European influences. So now my question is, at what point in history did people feel it necessary to be under the rule of another human? And I'm even referring to pre-gods and goddesses where people acknowledge their strengths in connecting to nature and the divine source. And that comes down to animism, ancestor worship, and shamanism. Although these spiritual practices were foundational, they evolved into more complex belief systems involving specific gods and goddesses and formal religious structures. This transition likely occurred over time, influenced by factors like the development of agriculture, the rise of settled communities, and the need to explain natural phenomena and societal structures, which makes sense because you cannot explain supernatural experiences to a person who has not experienced it. In order for people to believe, most times they need tangible proof, which you cannot provide with supernatural things. Even if you know that you know what you experience, a person is not going to easily believe you. So it makes complete sense that they had to take spiritual practices and turn them into tangible religious things so that people can connect more to it. Because like I said, if something happens supernaturally, you can't explain that to a person who doesn't understand it because they're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not even real. People need to see proof in order to believe things. So that's where I feel like all of this transition happened. Now let's discuss prophets. Prophets are often described as having the spiritual gift of prophecy, which enables them to receive and transmit messages from God. This gift can manifest in various different ways, including delivering messages of warning, comfort, or instruction, or even predicting future events. Prophets may also possess other spiritual gifts such as wisdom, knowledge, discernment of spirits, or even miraculous powers. A lot of known prophets claim to have received revelations from God, which I'm not denying, right? But also, again, people are idolizing people. The same way prophets can receive revelations is the same way that you can. But the question is, are you positioning yourself to allow that wisdom to come in? Just like the example of being a person who naturally has dreams from God, unprovoked, whether as warnings, giving information, or foreshadowing events, and it actually ends up playing out exactly like in the dream, would you consider them a prophet and follow them? Or would you consider them to have the gift of dreaming and just acknowledge that they have a strong spiritual connection to God? So my genuine question is, how can you pedestalize a person so much that you make them your leader to follow while disempowering yourself? Like back in the day, did it take for someone, in this case a chosen prophet, for the Spirit of God to give them wise insight because of God's awareness of that individual's ability to listen and also knowing their strength and courage to stand out and spread the given message? So could that explain the formation of man-made religion? Was there a loss of faith in the Spirit of God based on the things people were experiencing at the hands of greedy, power-hungry, violent men? It's almost like people are always looking for a savior or someone to have authority over them for protection without realizing the power that they have inside of themselves because of how they've been broken down mentally, emotionally, and physically, leading them to be disconnected spiritually. And one thing that I know as a spiritual person, when you are not allowing yourself to be connected to God, like actually being intentional about it, you're going to be disconnected. You have to want that. You have to be open to that. Again, when you look back at the formation of Judaism, Moses was a beacon of light for the slaves held captive in Egypt. He represents the strength and freedom that they needed in such a difficult time. And because it's something and someone clear and in front of them, they are likely to submit and follow his lead with respect versus follow his lead while also acknowledging the strength within themselves as they experience life. And again, it's really important to acknowledge that the slaves literally just gained freedom after some time of being slaves. And to be a slave means to be in a very vulnerable position and have your free will taken away from you. So after some time of being broken down through fear and violence, you are likely to submit a lot easier due to the fear of consequences. Even if it means compromising your beliefs for survival, you will do exactly as you are told. So after explaining all of that, it makes a lot of sense why people would follow a prophet because of their open connection to the divine source. But to form a religion, or some would even say a cult, I ain't say it, I just hear people say it, but I ain't, is the part that I'm not understanding. Why wasn't just spreading the general message of morality enough, while still being empowered in self under the spirit of God's leadership and not man? But I also understand that religion has been used to manipulate and divide and conquer, but that's another video for another day. That is why in the film we notice two sides. Those fearfully practicing religion, solely reciting prayers and man-made, already written for you, ready to read scriptures, while avoiding their ancestral past and natural strengths. And then you have those who acknowledge their authority while following their ancient spiritual practices, utilizing God's natural earthly herbs and elements with positive intention, emphasis on positive, because there's duality in everything. Just like you have good, you have bad. It's all about the intention that a person is doing behind something. You could be a part of a religion and be praying something bad to happen to somebody. You're still doing something bad. Just because you're praying don't make it holy. You're doing something bad by wishing bad on someone. So like I said, the people in the film were using natural elements along with words of prayer verbally spoken aloud. And I'm going to elaborate more on verbal expressions in my next point. Now let's move on to music and the power of words and its spiritual ties. Spiritually tapped in people, whether you are religious or not, understand words are powerful. Words can act as spells. In fact, words are spells. And I know when people hear spells, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's demonic. Listen, open your mind to what I'm saying. However you want to label it, words are spells, which is why it is really important to be mindful of the words you speak out of your mouth, but also the words that you allow into your mind, because it has the ability to program you and shift your mindset. The blues genre really highlights how the blues have deep spiritual ties to the hardships that have been channeled into powerful expressions through music. But when played and spoken, can also invoke spirits of the past, both positive and negative, because words hold power. That is why in the film we noticed when Sammy was performing on the stage, he invoked various spirits because of his strong, intense essence that further fueled energy behind those words. Now, religious people avoided the blues because of the negative energy attached to it. Although it was a creation of art, that I would not necessarily call demonic because I don't believe that, but I will acknowledge that those words do stem from harsh, painful, and depressing times. And I can understand the purpose of creating those songs while they were actively living the words expressed to get them by. However, with understanding that words hold power, I don't think it's wise to keep repeating those words. Why? Because you casually singing those songs is the equivalent to you speaking those words over your present self. So you are unknowingly coming into agreement with those words of bondage and pain, allowing it the potential to manifest into your current reality. For example, a child who has a verbally abusive parent who doesn't use words to uplift them, instead will call them dumb and say that they're a failure, that child will grow up to believe those things about themselves if they do not unprogram their mind of those negative installments. Because just think about like your mind as like a computer. What you put in is what you will get out. So be mindful of what you're putting in so that you don't get out something that you don't want to get. Or another clear and common example is what we see in today's music. When you have rappers making gangbanging drill music, oftentimes we see their lives manifest into tragic endings, and even worse, the negative effect that it has over society, especially the impressionable youth who finds themselves going down the wrong path, all because of the power of words that people fail to acknowledge. So yes, it is very important to guard yourself. Or even another example that I feel that goes over a lot of people's heads is y'all's favorite internet scamming king, Umar Johnson. Why do y'all think he repeats himself 3 or more times? He's not slow. He's not just stalling or trying to gather his thoughts. He is casting a spell to put power behind his words so that they stick more into the mind of the viewers. It's like a subtle way of brainwashing. Where your attention is fixated on, your energy flows and gives it power. So even if you may not agree with what he's saying, the fact that he's repeating himself numerous times, it's almost like your subconscious will take in that information and consider the accuracy of it if you don't stand firm on what it is that you believe, because he's telling you basically what to believe. So back to the movie. With this understanding, it also highlights the connection to them drinking alcohol, which is also known as spirits. So if you ever look at the liquor store and it says spirits, that's also another word for alcohol. And as a spiritual person, I understand that alcohol is a way to drop your defenses, leaving you vulnerable to potential poor decision making and spiritual attacks. So to make sense of the connection, if you are always speaking words of depression and you lack the awareness of the energy you are cultivating within yourself by singing blues music, and you lack the emotional capacity and healthy coping skills to self-regulate, it makes sense why they turn towards the unhealthy coping mechanism of drinking. It was their quick fix of feeling good, but unfortunately, that ultimately opened more doors for negative spirits to be manifested and latch onto them. Now, my thing is, with all the negative criticism of the movie, is I've noticed how a lot of religious people lack the understanding of being spiritually in tune. Like I said before, yes, music is energy, and it is very important to guard your ear gates and disengage, but you also have the power and authority to counter that energy. Pray and declare against what does not settle right in your spirit. But to demonize a movie that is so deep and not be willing to peel back the layers of the overall message is beyond me. And by the way, Sammy deciding to choose his gift of music over the church was not the movie sending the message to abandon God. The church is literally built on the plantation, a place literally filled with traumatic memories. So even though you are free, you are still bound to your capturer. It's almost like Stockholm Syndrome. They abuse you but provide you with something to keep you comfortable enough to stay because you fear going without. You rather stay where you've been traumatized versus taking a chance on building something for yourself while trusting and having faith that you will be covered, protected, and provided for. Also, critically think and ask yourself, if white folks never wanted black people to have anything and wanted to keep them oppressed, why would they so freely and openly allow y'all to practice their religion? Again, anything that Black people have and acquire, they want to destroy and strip them of while giving them white folks' beliefs. It is clear that Black people were slaves and then were made free, then transitioned to adopting Christian values. If white folks saw them as bottom of the barrel to the point where they didn't even want to share spaces or even a water fountain, why did they allow you to adopt their beliefs without any pushback? Unless there was a sense of mental control set in place that benefits the white folks and their plans for you. And really think about the question that I'm about to ask, because this question is the first and only question that I asked myself that led me down a rabbit hole of just unpacking all of this. And honestly, it's why I think the way that I think. Imagine when God first put humans on this earth before all of these man-made things. So before all these rules and all these systems that we had in place, how do you think life would have been to live freely without a care? And then think about the system that we were born into. Does it not give slavery to y'all? Like, does it not make you uncomfortable to know how far away we are from the natural that God has created us to be in? Because I don't know about y'all, but like when it comes to just like the life that I feel like they have so mapped out, detailed for us, I just, in my spirit, it doesn't feel right for me to abide by, because it's like I want the natural, purest form of what God has for me. I don't want what man wants me to want. I don't want what man wants me to believe. I want the natural. I want me and God and nothing in between that. You get what I'm saying? So, yes, Sammy stayed true to himself and didn't abandon his God-given gift, and he was prosperous until the very end. He even chose to stay human and not become a vampire. That still wasn't enough for y'all to say his choice of integrity and self-preservation and leaving the earth when God calls him. That wasn't enough for y'all. Y'all still think the movie demonic? Like, come on, y'all. Anyways, this concludes part 1, the spiritual analysis deep dive. Next up will be part 2, where we will be discussing the connection to the culture vultures, the music industry's exploitation, and sellouts. And y'all, like I said, I did not mean to like start a war, but like I'm a person, I'm always going to ask why. I'm not afraid to ask why. I'm not afraid to ask questions that I feel like a lot of people within society are afraid to ask, whether it's because people will make it seem like, oh, well, you're asking too many questions, or why. I'm just that person. Like, I'm gonna ask questions, and I'm not gonna believe something just because people tell me to believe it. It needs to make sense to me. I need the information. And you know, that's what I'm trying to say when it comes to like human nature, right? You wanna know why. But I'm also a very spiritually tapped in person. So for me, I also believe in the unknown. I believe in those things that the eye cannot see. Listen, y'all, I'm a very multi-layered person, and the more that I'm accepting myself, the more that I am just growing and educating myself and peeling back the programming that I feel like society has put on me, the more that I just feel like I'm actually growing a genuine connection with God outside of what it looks like to other people. And I just truly encourage people to really do the same for themselves, because a lot of people, like I said, you claim to be religious because that is what you've been told to be. But it's like there are so many religious people where it looks like you have a relationship with God, but like, do you feel like you have a relationship with God? Do you genuinely connect to God? Because to me, this whole back and forth with, oh, I believe this, I believe that, or if you don't believe what I believe, then it's a problem. I just feel like, listen, some of the most religious people be some of the most demonic people. And y'all have to also ask yourselves, with a lot of these religions, when you find out just what they've done to gain power, to gain control, to spread their message, that don't give God. That gives very demonic. For you to have to kill people to get your way of having people convert to your belief systems, that is very much demonic. And until y'all can wrap your head around the logics of things, I'm gonna keep having these conversations because I hope it reaches the people who are open to it. Listen, I'm not here to change any closed-minded person's opinions. If you want to be closed-minded, listen, do your thing. It doesn't affect me at all. But people who are like myself, who want to really dive deep and really understand and really just connect to themselves in their truest, just like most natural form, I'm your girl. Okay, so while I'm on my journey of self-discovery, but also, you know, just deconstructing the system, let's connect. Let's, you know, let's enjoy these little research topics, because I'm not gonna lie, I haven't wrote a 14-page paper in a while. I don't think I've ever wrote a 14-page paper, and I absolutely love this video. Like, I love the research. I loved creating this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. So yeah, let me know you guys' thoughts and opinions, and I'll see y'all for part 2. Be back. I'm gonna try to have it up by Monday, but like I said, I'm supposed to be moving on Wednesday, so you know, I'm doing a lot in the back end, but I'm gonna really try to get it out because I don't want to like create a big gap. So anyways, thank you for watching this video.